It's hard to find a pro wrestler who's more widely respected by his peers than The Undertaker, but even the Deadman has his detractors. Here's why these wrestlers have beef with the American Badass. The Undertaker defeated Hulk Hogan to earn his first WWE Championship at Survivor Series in 1991. That reign lasted all of 2 days because Hogan won the title back at the This Tuesday in Texas event. Undertaker himself addressed the situation in an interview with ESPN in 2020, referring to his signature tombstone piledriver.
Hogan claims that I heard him on the tombstone during the pay-per-view.
Taker went on to explain that he never got a reason for losing the title so quickly, but he assumed it was because high-ups in the WWE couldn't trust him to be safe in the ring with their golden goose at the time, Hogan. After the Survivor Series match, the Hulkster went so far as to tell medics to call his family. What made it even worse was that The Undertaker had taken every precaution he could to avoid doing any further damage to Hogan's already injured neck. The Undertaker watched the spot back and saw that Hogan's head was nowhere close to hitting the chair that was on the mat underneath. When he confronted Hogan about that, the Hulkster claimed that The Undertaker had actually been holding him too tight, restricting his movement.
Then I knew, I was like, okay. I kind of realized, okay, I know what you're all about.
Taker added that the two megastars maintained a professional relationship, but they were far from friends. It seems pretty clear the mistrust went both ways. During his various stints in WWE over the years, Chris Jericho had plenty of run-ins with The Undertaker. The Deadman even lost the World Heavyweight Championship to Jericho in 2010. That said, they never met in singles action on a pay-per-view, and Jericho's recollection of a 1999 promo can maybe lend some insight as to why that was. The now AEW star said on his Talk is Jericho podcast, "I told Undertaker how boring he was after he just delivered a 10-minute super boring promo. I got so much heat for that. I remember Shawn Michaels said, word of advice, something you might not want to do on the second night in the company is tell the top star in the company how boring he is." While he didn't say Michaels' advice was wrong, Jericho also stuck to his guns, contending that he found The Undertaker boring. Of course, Taker had to respond. Jericho recalled, "He gave me the line of, 'I've had more shower time than you've had ring time.'" The current Ring of Honor champion conceded that it was a funny line, but didn't think it was accurate. He had been wrestling for 9 years by then. He had just come to WWE from his WCW run. Undertaker had 13 years under his belt by then, some of that time in WCW too. It does seem that Jericho's animus toward Undertaker was mostly focused toward the character rather than the man. In 2020, Jericho was effusive in his praise for Taker during his 30th anniversary celebration.
He's one of the coolest guys I've ever met in my life.
Since retiring from the ring in 2020, The Undertaker has given lots of out-of-character interviews and started his own podcast, providing commentary on contemporary wrestling, as well as recalling the days of yore. One contemporary wrestler to have taken issue with Taker's more controversial remarks has been former AEW star Joey Janela. In 2021, Janela took to X, formerly Twitter, and riffed on remarks made by the Deadman about wrestlers playing video games in the locker room. He wrote, "I'm gonna buy a PlayStation 5 and immediately bury it in the dirt to show my allegiance to the legends of locker room past." Janela would continue in that vein in 2022, responding to Taker's comments that today's wrestlers lack grit. Janela sarcastically wrote, "I 100% agree, Mark. Lots of lame Marvel geek talk in these locker rooms. If I ever open up a wrestling school before you have your first match, you're gonna have to get in at least 2 bar fights with proof." By the way, the Avengers movies suck. Janela later revealed that former AEW colleague Cody Rhodes reached out to reprimand him for the comments toward Undertaker, but he assured the American Nightmare that he was just joking around for a reaction. For his part, Janela has mostly used Undertaker as a device for arguing against a double standard. After about 5 years with the company, WWE released Paul London in November 2008. He spoke extensively about his time there in the Brian Kendrick and Paul London's Excellent Adventure double DVD in 2010, including a few choice words about The Undertaker. London said that he would catch glimpses of the good that Undertaker could do, but shook his head at other things, like being dragged out of a hotel room in the early morning for Wrestler's Court, in which The Undertaker usually presided over punishments for perceived bad backstage behavior. London said the Deadman acted as Judge Judy. London added another swipe, saying, "I'm not a fan of people who love themselves. I'm not a fan of people who wear their own merchandise. I'm not a fan of people who put Deadman on their license plates." Both Kendrick and London said that people would act differently around Undertaker backstage, with some people they thought were friends tattling about bad behavior to the Deadman. a position he seemed to relish. London has since expanded upon Undertaker's backstage presence during a 2023 interview with Wrestling Then and Now.
The Don Corleone of the locker room, I think. There's nobody more respected in the locker room than him.
But London added that The Undertaker was also feared. He said Taker had people that'll do his bidding so he could teach other wrestlers lessons while appearing to stay above the fray. Doug Gilbert's one and only WWE pay-per-view appearance came during the 1996 Royal Rumble, headlined by Bret Hart defending his WWE Championship against The Undertaker. Gilbert and Undertaker had previously worked together in the Memphis-based United States Wrestling Association. In a title match wrestling shoot interview, Gilbert shared a story about a pre-Undertaker Mark Calloway hitching rides. Gilbert said, "I carried Mark around. Mark rode with me, The Undertaker, when he was in Memphis and we hung out together. We made trips, 4 days a week together, and we'd ride in my car because he didn't have enough money to put tires on his car." On January 3rd, 1996, Gilbert won a Battle Royal to earn himself a spot in the Royal Rumble match later that month. Gilbert said that considering they had ridden together before, he assumed he would have some form of friendly reunion with Taker, but he was met instead with a gruff and dismissive demeanor, which Gilbert took as The Undertaker feeling like his former driver didn't belong in the Rumble match. Gilbert said, "It's all about what have you done for me lately, I guess. He sure didn't remember that he didn't have enough money to get to the towns without me." Gilbert said he tried to catch up with Taker, asking him if he'd been doing okay. He recalled The Undertaker offering a one-word reply, "Yeah." Gilbert said, "I thought, man, f*** you." Rene Dupree has spoken quite a bit about his mid-2000s WWE run, including one story that speaks to The Undertaker's role as a backstage leader, and not in a good way. In an appearance on that 90s wrestling podcast in 2021, Dupree recalled a time where he had upset the balance backstage by not going out on a drinking trip he said he wasn't even invited to.
They shoved my $500 shoes and nearly $1,000 suit and ruined it in the shower.
Worse than that, Dupree said some other wrestlers urinated and defecated on the French flag he carried with him. He said, "I don't know what world you live in, but in my world, that's called racial discrimination. That was really hurtful." Dupree said he first went to producer Arn Anderson, who advised him to just let it go. Then he went to The Undertaker. He surmised from their conversation that Taker had been behind the whole thing to teach him a lesson. Dupree left WWE at his own request in July 2007. Not everyone with a beef against The Undertaker is still with us. Brian Pillman sadly died from a heart attack at the age of just 35 in 1997, and it seems he took some bad blood with The Undertaker to the grave with him. The two first worked together in WCW when The Undertaker was Mean Mark Callis. According to the 2017 book Crazy Like a Fox, the definitive chronicle of Brian Pillman, the two exchanged words after their match at 1990's Clash of the Champions 11, and apparently never had anything positive to say to each other again. When Pillman jumped to WWE in 1996, long after Taker did so, he was only the second wrestler in the promotion's history to get a guaranteed contract. Taker was among those who took issue with that and other deals like it, viewing it as new signees getting perks longtime stalwarts weren't afforded. The two also seemed to just have a personality clash. Crazy Like a Fox notes that Pillman's outgoing demeanor rubbed Undertaker the wrong way. Meanwhile, Pillman saw The Undertaker as a fraud. The book states, with Pillman's credibility as a street fighter and NFL alumnus, he saw a vast contradiction in Undertaker, who Pillman deemed a fake biker. Brian saw him as a man without any reputation as a credible fighter, but still carried himself as if he should be feared. In many ways, Pillman thought Calloway was a phony. Chris Kanyon also died young. He tragically took his own life in 2010 at the age of only 40. He had long struggled with his closeted homosexuality in a sport rooted in the trappings of masculinity. Kanyon was likewise another WCW star who made his way to WWE, coming to the latter company after WWE bought out WCW in 2001. Kanyon suffered an injury during a dark match in October of that year. He struggled with depression and erratic behavior during his time off for the injury, and the infamous segment that marked his return surely didn't help. On the February 13, 2003 episode of SmackDown, Kanyon re-emerged from a large present given to The Undertaker by The Big Show. Kanyon was dressed as Culture Club singer Boy George and forced to sing his own rendition of the song Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? The segment ended with Taker hitting Kanyon with several audibly stiff chair shots, including one unprotected to the head. Kanyon was released by WWE a year later. In his memoir, he said that he believed the segment to be a joke about his sexuality. He also accused the company of releasing him because he was gay. The Undertaker has since addressed the Kanyon rumors, denying he was even aware of the fact he was gay, while accepting that the chair shots were dangerous.
And I had to sing, and it's brutal. I don't sing well.
Tracy Smothers worked just about everywhere in wrestling, including with a pre-Undertaker Mark Calloway in Memphis. The late veteran was very vocal about the way he felt the former Mean Mark had changed over the years. Smothers accused The Undertaker, along with Shawn Michaels, of having a hand in his departure from WWE in 2000. And he claimed he wasn't the only one to get that treatment. In a 2018 interview with Hannibal TV, Smothers said, "Yeah, back then, I guess you take it personal, you do, especially when they screw you over. But I guess in that spot, guys think they've got to be paranoid. But I've heard some stuff Undertaker's done, you know. He used to have a smile on his face all the time. But I guess in that spot, in that position, you know they think everybody's against them." Smothers recalled an incident backstage between an unnamed developmental wrestler and The Undertaker. He said, "It was some kind of meeting. Undertaker was there, something or whatever. His cell phone went off. I guess Undertaker got pissed about it, and I think he tried to make amends with him or something. Bought a real nice bourbon or something, but he got him fired."